I have played sports my whole life. I started playing sports when I was 3 years old at my local YMCA. There, I learned to pass, shoot, and dribble a basketball, a sport I still play to this day. At around 9 years old, there was one thing I knew about myself. I loved to compete, and sports provided me that opportunity. At some point, there was a shift from learning to love and play the game to wanting to be the best, the very best. That year, I asked my mom if it'd be okay if I left the YMCA, as I felt that I'd outgrown it. And for those of you who are not familiar, the YMCA is a recreational basketball league, which means they don't keep score, and there's an emphasis on improvement and building community above all else. I can feel it. There are some of you out there right now rolling your eyes at the concept of not keeping score. And let me tell you, 9-year-old Eric shared a similar feeling. It was at that age, I was so hyper-competitive that I realized that keeping score was more important to me than anything else. At this point, I was already getting in trouble for keeping score in my head and becoming overly upset when my teammates underperformed. My poor parents. So, after some serious consideration, my parents and I decided to take my talents to a more competitive atmosphere for everyone's benefit, especially those volunteer refs. They got the worst. When I told my coach I wasn't going to be playing at the Y anymore, he was disappointed to see me leave. He left me with one last piece of advice. Eric, there's more to sports than winning and losing. I was 9. What else is there, coach? So I moved on. And when I tell you that my behavior improved dramatically, well, I'd be lying straight to your face. It actually got worse, much worse. I started getting technical fouls. I was even ejected from a few games. Once again, my poor parents. My love for sports came directly from the competition. I loved to win, and I hated losing even more. It became so personal. Fast forward about a decade, I just recently graduated college, and I'm on the hunt for a new job. To my surprise, the very same YMCA that wasn't competitive enough for my 9-year-old liking had just offered me a position. And you guessed it, it was the sports director. So I weighed my options, and I questioned it for quite some time. Could a hyper-competitive 22-year-old run a basketball program that he once thought was beneath him? What do you think I did? I was still a broke 22-year-old. Of course I took the job. Now, as a new coach, I had to consider my methods. And usually coaches carry a philosophy. And all I knew as an athlete was to compete like hell. So that's what I brought to the table. In that moment, I decided that my team, skilled or not, would be the most disciplined and competitive team this recreational YMCA has ever seen. Just imagine how that went. Well, as my first season approached, I thought, I'll just coach the older kids. They take it a little more seriously. Wrong. My boss informed me that I would be coaching the 7 to 8-year-olds. And man, did that team test my patience. We took a lot of water breaks during practice that season. And I had a rule. No talking while the coach is talking. And I had a kid who was not a big fan of this rule. He spoke out of turn all the time. One practice, I reminded him of this rule, and his response was, "My mom signed me up. I don't even like basketball." Now, as a kid, I had a major disdain for this type of teammate, the kid who never focused. But I was older now, and I wasn't as ignorant. So I asked myself, what can I do differently? And after a few weeks of effort and no progress, I finally sat him and his mom down to try to hash it out. And I asked him, what do you enjoy most about playing basketball? And I'll never forget his response. Snack time, coach. I actually get to talk to my friends. I never get to talk to them during practice. It was in this moment that clarity had come over me. Here was this kid who loved basketball because his friends were there, and I wasn't allowing him the time to enjoy that. How could I not see that? Not everyone is a psycho-competitive freak like myself. It was in this moment that I realized that loving sports did not have to look like the way I love sports. In fact, he made me realize I may have been taking things a little too seriously. Here was this kid who loved basketball for his own personal reasons, and I didn't see it. And for 5 to 6 weeks, I made him say, I don't like basketball. I was trying to force these kids at the Y to be like me. Not only were my eyes open, my ears were now open too. I was excited to understand why others love sports and what connected their love to sports and how it was different than mine. Because of this little 7-year-old, I realized that to some, what mattered most was the opportunity to make new friends, to grow the team, and enjoy the little moments. Not just the score when the clock hit 0. My philosophy needed some updating. I wanted to help find everyone's snack time. Now, a few seasons later, I was coaching another team, and things were rocking. We were making progress, keeping it competitive, but this time we were having a lot more fun. Everything was great. Dare I say, almost perfect? There was one problem. We had one kid who never came to practice. But he was there for every game, and he was late every time. And because of this, the chemistry was off. There was an obvious difference from when he was on the court versus when he wasn't. And at the Y, there's a rule that everyone gets equal playing time. But the parents and the kids on the team didn't think it was fair that this kid got the same playing time as everyone else who put the work in. Who was this kid? And what gives him the right to just show up to games, never pass, and take all the shots and laugh it off the entire time? I wanted to share our frustrations with his parents and see if we could motivate them to see this as a priority and that we could improve as a team if he just came a little more frequently. The problem was the parents never showed up either. Until one day they were there, so I ran right up to Mom. And that's when Mom told me that her and Dad were struggling financially. And they had to work late, meaning their son couldn't make to practice. He just didn't have a ride. She left me speechless. In this moment, I realized why he comes to games and runs around smiling and laughing so carefree. He just wants to come play, but due to his circumstances, he can't come as often. Every Tuesday, he has to wonder if he can make it to practice. But when he can actually show up to a game on a Saturday, even before the game begins, just by wearing his uniform with his teammates, he's already won. Once we realized how challenging it was for this kid, we, as a team, made some arrangements to help get this kid to practice each week. As a team, we wanted to chase wins, but for this kid, the fact that he made it to the game today was the only win he needed. It really challenged us as a group, especially myself, to put success into perspective. Who am I to take away this kid's escape, his happy place, where he didn't have to worry about the outside drama in his life? We never know what's going on with people because we get so caught up with chasing success. For some, basketball is their escape. I realized that to everybody, they can get something different out of it. We can have the competitive kid, the kid that just wants to make friends, and the kid that just needs an escape. My philosophy continued to grow. Now, this last story that I'm going to share is one of my favorites to reflect on, as it just hits a soft spot for me. When you compare myself at 22, the hyper-competitive person who hated to lose, to a year later, I was faced with one of the most interesting challenges yet. After a few weeks, I realized that I had a kid on my team who was so hyper-competitive. He played to win at all costs and thought losing was the worst thing in his life. Doesn't that sound familiar? I was looking at the 12-year-old version of myself. He was so mad after a loss, and I knew exactly what that felt like. He made some choices at the end of the game that would lead most people to assume he was a short-tempered, spoiled, sore loser. And I knew that feeling all too well at that age. We sat down and we talked about that moment before the next practice, and I just wanted to tell him that I understood what he was feeling. We even laughed over some of my moments as a kid playing sports, and I was really thankful for this moment because it was a second chance. Not only was this a second chance for him to learn from his mistakes and prove to everyone that his past did not define him and that he could grow from that day, it was a second chance for me to prove to myself that I had grown from that 12-year-old who lost his cool. 2 years ago, I would have looked at this kid and said, "Good luck, man. It's a really hard reputation to shake." But now, I was shaking in excitement just to work with him. I could not wait to share with him that I understand where he's coming from. But I also wanted to share with him all the great things that I've learned the last few years. He and I, we could sit there for hours and talk about him improving as a basketball player and how we could take his game to the next level. Instead, the conversation was about being a better teammate, working on patience and respect for his teammates, his coaches, his opponents, that this stuff would help him with his relationship with his parents, his teachers, his future coworkers. The list can go on and on. This stuff will help him get more out of life and learn to love the little things that make it beautiful, because there's more to basketball than winning and losing, and there's more to life than basketball. With everything you do, you should be enjoying the process, because basketball, or whatever it is you're doing, is just one part of life. And there's always something we can get out of it, no matter what that might look like. When you're so focused on a goal, your feelings don't present themselves until you see the final result. You either achieve it or fail it. And in between, it's anxiety, a state of constant suspense, until you do or you don't achieve that goal. And then you immediately turn that page to the next one, the next game, the next project, test, etc. And this is no way to live. It should not be about the end result. It should be about enjoying the journey. And while I was telling this kid all of these lessons, I had this realization. I was repeating the same thing my coach told me 14 years ago. I get it. I get it now. There's more to basketball than winning and losing. All right, everyone, listen up. My name is Coach Eric. Some of you may have played for me in the past. Some of you may be new to this. If you have played with me before, you know that I expect discipline and competitiveness every time we step on that court. That said, we have a few new rules this season. 1, give it everything you got, but don't focus too much on the outcome because you're going to miss so much along the way. 2, give yourself credit. Sometimes just showing up can be the hardest part. 3, make some friends and help your teammates out when they're down, because one day you may need them to return the favor. And 4, lastly, have fun, because at the end of the day, win or lose, we have snacks waiting for us outside. Thank you.